I'm going to marry you.
You can't. We're not Egyptians.
It was Caligula who came before the queen, before prime suspect, and even before Excalibur made his appearance. And what exactly is the core of it all? A young Helen Mirren goes confidently into one of the film sets that is considered to be the most turbulent, controversial, and simply weird in the history of the film industry. Despite the fact that almost everyone involved finally distanced themselves from the final product, Dame Helen has never once expressed regret over the situation. The exact opposite is true in this case. She is pleased with her performance in a film that there were critics referred to as a cinematic dumpster fire. The question is, how on earth did one of the most renowned actresses of our time find up acting in a movie that was banned in a number of countries, seized by customs, sued over, and denounced by both the director and the author of the movie? It is necessary to go back to 1976 in order to answer this question. At that time, the renowned author Gore Vidal was approached with the idea of writing a script about the notorious Roman Emperor Caligula. The approach that Vidal took was audacious. It was a political parable that demonstrated how total power corrupts absolutely. Rather than being driven insane by heredity, he portrayed Caligula as a man who was driven insane by the iron weight of unfettered imperial authority. Caligula, which was written by Vidal, was intended to be a cautionary tale at its core, with Rome serving as a metaphor for the 20th century and decadence representing deterioration. Then, however, Bob Guccione appeared. We are talking about Bob Guccione, the man who established Penthouse magazine. Despite the fact that Guccione had contributed to the financing of Chinatown, The Longest Yard, and The Day of the Locust, he desired to develop something on his own, something that was more substantial, louder, and more explicit. As for the vehicle, what could be more suitable than a Roman epic that is filled to the brim with orgies, corruption, incest, and assassination? Guccione gave his consent to sponsor Vidal's script, but only under certain specified conditions. The first thing that he wanted was that the content to be rewritten so that it contained less gay content and more heteronormative sex. Tinto Brass, an Italian director whose earlier film, Salon Kitty, was already pushing boundaries with Nazi-themed eroticism, was then hired by him. Brass is responsible for numerous controversial films. Brass, on the other hand, was not only interested in the shock factor of it. From the beginning, he had the idea that Caligula would be a subversive black comedy, a cutting satire of tyranny that would be camouflaged as a historical drama. His Caligula was not a good man after he had gone insane. He had a divine ego since he was born a monster, and he had no control over his impulses. The casting process started, and it was a rather prestigious one. The lead was taken by Malcolm McDowell, who was still riding high off the success of A Clockwork Orange. It was Peter O'Toole who agreed to play the role of Tiberius, the syphilitic emperor. Sir John Gielgud, a legendary figure in the world of theater, volunteered to perform the role of Nerva. Then there was Helen Mirren, who was cast in the role of Caesonia, Caligula's wild, sensual, and politically astute wife, a lady who lived in Rome and was considered by Roman historians to be the most promiscuous woman in the entire city. Mirren, on the other hand, was completely committed. In 1976, production began in Rome's cherished studios, and almost immediately, things began to take an odd turn. These sets were enormous in size. Over 3,500 outfits were manufactured, 5,000 sandals were handcrafted, and more than 1,000 pounds of human hair was used to construct wigs. All of these accomplishments were accomplished under the direction of Danilo Donati, an art director who had previously collaborated with Fellini. There were 120 hand-carved oars used in the construction of a full-scale Roman ship. The length of it was greater than a football field, and its height was 30 feet. The budget for props alone may have been sufficient to fund a small country. Behind the splendor, however, anarchy ruled supreme. Gore Vidal and Tinto Brass had previously been at odds with one another on the path that the story would take. The purpose of Brass was to increase the amount of visual surrealism, grotesquerie, and symbolic sex. Immediately after Vidal gave an interview in which he referred to directors as parasites, Brass ordered him to leave the set permanently. Following Brass's statement that Vidal's script was the product of an aged arteriosclerosis, Vidal initiated a lawsuit in an effort to have his name removed from the document, So much for working together as a team. It was then that Peter O'Toole appeared. Malcolm McDowell, who also starred in the film, claims that O'Toole was less than sober during the production. It is said that he chain-smoked joints from a cigarette holder, and at one point he yelled at John Gielgud, "Johnny, what is a knight of the realm doing in a pornographic movie?" In spite of the craziness, Helen Mirren was able to move through the insanity with ease. The shoot, as she later described it, was similar to a nudist camp in which everyone was naked so that nobody felt self-conscious about their appearance. She stated that it was the time now. To have your knickers in a twist-over appeared to be nothing more than a trivial matter. However, there is no denying that Mirren was not a weakling. Later on, when she was questioned about the hardcore inserts that Guccione had added after filming, she stated that she was surprised by them. She continues to maintain her support for her performance, as well as the creative goals that were behind the project. The actual twist arrived at that point. When Brass had recorded enough video to make Ben-Hur 50 times over, he was terminated from his position. During the night, Guccione and his associate Giancarlo Louis surreptitiously entered the studio with penthouse models who were filming unsimulated sex scenes that were intended to be inserted into the film. Brass, along with the main characters, was unaware of this. When it was finally released in 1979 in Italy and 1980 in the United States, the final edit was a Frankenstein's monster of tones that were not matched up. A straight-up adult film, a psychosexual horror picture, a historical drama, and a political satire film are all included. Some of the scenes were so weird that they have become legendary in the world of Hollywood. There is a scene in which Mirren's character gives birth in front of the camera, which is so impressively gory that there were claims that it was actually a real delivery. It was not the case. The filming of 3 real pregnant extras took place in rapid succession, with real doctors dressed in Roman clothing standing by to ensure the safety of the pregnant women. The production was determined to blur the border between fiction and spectacle, and this is how devoted it was to doing so. During yet another infamous event, Caligula enters a banquet while fully clad in gold leaf, and makes the announcement that the senators' wives will henceforth be employed as prostitutes by the state. Later on, he kills noblemen by burying them up to their necks and then driving a chariot in front of their heads. The movie was made unforgettable by scenes such as this one, but not in the way its creators had envisioned. While the filmmakers might have expected shock, awe, or even artistic reverence, what they got instead was a storm of ridicule and condemnation. The critical reception was nothing short of brutal. Roger Ebert, one of the most respected film critics of his time, famously stormed out of the screening after enduring 2 full hours. His verdict was searing. He called the film disgusting, absolutely worthless, and disgraceful trash. There was no room for ambiguity. This wasn't just a bad film in his eyes. It was an artistic catastrophe. Variety, known for its industry-savvy critiques, did not hold back either. It labeled the film a moral holocaust, a phrase so harsh it suggested the movie wasn't just flawed, but deeply corrosive to cultural standards. J. Scott of the Globe and Mail was similarly scathing, claiming that the film failed on every conceivable level, offering no redeeming qualities in terms of storytelling, performance, or thematic cohesion. And yet, despite or perhaps because of the backlash, the public was intrigued. In New York City, people stood in long, snaking lines that wrapped around entire city blocks, eager to witness firsthand the spectacle that had sparked such outrage. Curiosity became currency. At a time when the average movie ticket was a fraction of the cost, audiences were willing to pay a then unthinkable $7.50 just for the chance to see it. This wasn't just a film, it was a phenomenon. Bob Guccione, ever the showman, went so far as to lease and completely rebrand a theater on the east side of Manhattan as Penthouse East, purely to host the screening. It wasn't just about distribution, it was about myth-making. But the controversy didn't die down with time. It followed the film through the decades, becoming part of its DNA. And then, in a twist worthy of the film's own chaotic legacy, Caligula was resurrected. In 2023, at the prestigious Cannes Film Festival, a new definitive cut premiered. This version was not merely an edit, it was a resurrection, the product of years of tireless work by historian and filmmaker Thomas Negavon. Having painstakingly sifted through over 90 hours of unused footage, Negovan was finally able to piece together a vision more faithful to the original intentions of screenwriter Gore Vidal and director Tinto Brass. The result was not only a restored film, but a renewed debate about what was Caligula truly, an artistic failure, a misunderstood epic, or a rare, chaotic gem from a time when cinema dared to be both outrageous and unfiltered. What is the end result? In this epic that lasts for 178 minutes, Guccione's graphic inserts are removed, lost dialogue is restored, and the performers are allowed to breathe. The cut was hailed by Malcolm McDowell, who stated that it finally brought one of my best performances to light. And the naysayers were in agreement. Reviews of the new edition were significantly more positive than those of the original. Are you of the opinion that Caligula was ahead of its time, the masterwork that is misunderstood? Or is it merely a notorious bystander in the annals of film history? Moreover, what are your thoughts on the courageous performance that Helen Mirren gave, the pioneering of? What if it's just plain crazy? Your ideas are welcome in the comments section. We can't wait to find out where you stand in accordance with the vast array of opinions.